Consider the zeros of the following functions. So let's first take a look at y. So number 1, let's take a look at y is equal to square root of 4 minus x squared, right? Okay, so if we graph this with our calculator, and I would always encourage you to graph them with your calculator to get a feel for what's going on. It looks something like this. In fact, it'll be the top half of a circle, right? If you graph the negative root, if you put a negative down right here, it'll graph the bottom half of the circle. And sometimes you'll see, like on your graphing calculator, it won't actually touch, right? It'll look like it's not touching the x-axis, but it is. This thing is actually, I'm not sure why the calculator people haven't gotten that straight, because it is touching the x-axis right there and right there. Okay, so let's find the zeros. Let's find what this value is and what this value is, because the 0 means where the y value is equal to 0. That is, y is not positive and y is not negative. It's when y is equal to 0. So we said y equal to 0, and then this is equal to square root of 4 minus x squared, like so. Square both sides to get rid of that square root, right? And this is 4 minus x squared, because squaring a square root goes away, right? Okay, and then, see, if you want to do it like this, if you just want to see it visually, that square root goes away when you square it, right? And then 0 squared is just 0. And then we can solve this thing for x now. So let's add x squared to both sides. So then x squared is equal to 4. Take the square root of both sides. And so x is equal to plus or minus square root of 4, right? Because whenever you take the square root of something, you have to take the plus or minus, right? I'll tell you what, let me do it like this. Let me write this. I'm going to leave it like this for now. And then when you take the square root of both sides, you just, the square goes away on the x, and then you end up with the square root of 4 here, and then this is equal to plus or minus, square root of 4 is 2, right? Because 2 times 2 equals 4. Okay, take a look at this guy. These values satisfy this equality because positive 2 times 2 is equal to 4, and negative 2 times negative 2 equals 4, right? If you put a negative 2 in here, negative 2 times negative 2 equals positive 4. So both of these will satisfy this equality. So these are the zeros. So this is negative 2 right here, and this is positive 2, right? Let's consider the next one. Let's consider the square root of x. Y equals square root of x. If we graph it, it will look something like this. It'll start at the origin, and it'll come up, and it'll taper off like that, right? Okay, so the only place where y is equal to 0 is right here at the origin. See, y is not positive, y is not negative, y is just 0. So 0 is the only place, but let's see how the analytical equation, let's see how the equation would tell us that. If we let y equal to 0, and we square both sides to get rid of the square root, so square, right? And 0 squared is just 0, so then x is equal to 0. So we see that the equation will tell us what those zeros are. This graph is just a representation of this analytical equation, right? This is just a representation. And then number 3, let's take a look at this one. Y is equal to x cubed minus 3x. Okay, this one's a little bit more interesting. If you graph it, it'll look like this. We have x, now we have y. Let me make sure. Yeah, it all made it in. And then this graph will look like the following. It'll come up, it'll cross, and it'll come down through the origin, and it'll go down, up like that, right? So this is coming over. Okay. Okay, so we want to find these values, right? First of all, notice that it goes to the origin. Well, that makes sense because y is equal to 0. If you put a 0 here and a 0 here, then y equals 0, right? So then 0 will be a solution for sure. So let's see how the equation falls out if we go through the motions. We said 0 equal to x cubed minus 3x, right? And we see that this equation, this equality is satisfied if we let x equals 0, then 0 equals 0, and that's a satisfactory statement. So x equals 0 is definitely one of the solutions. How will we find this value here and this value? Well, let's do some factoring. So this is just the same thing as x squared times x minus 3 times x, right? So they both have this x in here that we could pull out, right? We could factor out. And this is x squared minus 3, right? And see that if we distribute the x through, it comes back to what it was before. X cubed minus 3x, you see? Okay, so look at this, right? This function, this side of the equation is equal to 0 whenever x is equal to 0. See, if this is 0, then everything is 0, no matter what this other stuff is. So 0 satisfies it, right? But also, whenever this quantity here is 0, when that quantity is 0, then the whole thing is 0 also, because 0 times anything is 0. So let's come over here to the side and solve this equality. Let's set this equality. Let's set this quantity equal to 0. So then x squared minus 3 equals 0. And then bring the 3 over. So plus 3, so x squared, this cancels. X squared equals 3. And then taking the square root of both sides, x is equal to plus or minus square root of 3. Yeah. Checking to make sure that it made it into the screen because there's a cutoff area there. Okay, so this is, looking at this, this is 0, x equals 0. This is x equals negative square root 3. And this is positive square root 3. Right? Okay, so this is just finding the zeros of functions. This one is probably the most interesting of the three. And so if you want to, for the purposes of getting the answer right on the exam, you would say x equals 0, x equals negative square root of 3, and x equals positive square root of 3, like so. Okay, I'm going to step out the side and give you a clear screenshot. Try for yourself.